2025 has been a year of intense attention on gun laws across the United States. Headlines have been filled with claims, confusion, and debates about whether permits are ending, whether states can regulate firearms, and what the Supreme Court is really deciding. One of the most important legal developments this year is the emergency order issued by the Supreme Court, involving 26 states challenging gun permit laws. But understanding this case requires separating headlines from reality and looking at the legal process, court reasoning, and the bigger picture. This video is not here to alarm, persuade, or provide legal advice. Instead, it is a calm, factual, and detailed review of what the emergency order means, why it matters, and how it fits into the ongoing debate about gun rights, state authority, and constitutional law. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to this channel for clear, law-based updates and analysis. Let's break it down, chapter by chapter. Why this case matters. This case is being described by many legal experts as one of the most significant gun rights disputes since the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin decision. That ruling reshaped how courts evaluate gun laws by shifting the focus toward historical tradition and constitutional history, rather than modern policy arguments or public interest balancing. Within that framework, the current emergency order tests how far the Bruin standard extends when applied to permit requirements across multiple states. The question is not simply whether permits exist, but whether the legal justification behind those systems aligns with the constitutional approach outlined in earlier rulings. Because 26 states are now challenging certain permit laws, the issue has moved beyond any single jurisdiction. The legal question is no longer local, it is national. At its core, this case is about legal methodology, how courts analyze firearm regulations, what standards they apply, and how those standards may shape future decisions nationwide. What an emergency order is. Many people confuse emergency orders with final Supreme Court rulings, and that confusion often leads to misunderstanding what has actually taken place. Emergency actions by the court can sound dramatic, but their legal meaning is far more limited than many headlines suggest. An emergency decision is temporary. It allows the court to pause, allow, or block the enforcement of a law while a case continues moving through the judicial system. This step is taken when timing matters, but it is still part of the normal legal process, not the final word on the issue. An emergency order does not rewrite the Constitution. It does not strike down laws nationwide, and it does not instantly eliminate permit requirements or existing firearm regulations. Those broader outcomes can only occur after a full Supreme Court review, which includes detailed legal briefing, careful analysis, and a final written opinion. When the court issues an emergency order, it is signaling that the legal question is serious and urgent, not that it has been resolved. Understanding this distinction helps separate short-term legal action from long-term legal change and allows the public to interpret court decisions more accurately. The role of the Department of Justice. One unusual and widely discussed aspect of this case is that the Department of Justice, or DOJ, is not opposing the Supreme Court's emergency order. In many high-profile cases, the federal government actively challenges such actions. Here, however, the DOJ has taken a different approach by supporting the legal reasoning behind the order. This support signals that the DOJ believes certain permit frameworks used by some states may conflict with constitutional standards established in previous court rulings. The concern is not about whether regulation exists, but about whether the structure and justification of those laws align with current constitutional interpretation. Importantly, this does not mean the federal government is calling for zero gun or firearm regulation. Instead, it suggests that the DOJ sees potential legal weaknesses in how some permit laws are written or enforced. The DOJ's position adds weight to the argument being considered, but it does not determine the outcome. The final decision will still come through the full judicial process. States take sides. This is truly a national case, not a dispute limited to one state or one region. On one side, 26 states argue that certain permit requirements violate constitutional protections as they are currently interpreted by the courts. These states believe that some permitting systems place limits that may not align with standards set by earlier Supreme Court rulings. On the other side, several states strongly disagree. They warn that weakening or removing permit requirements could undermine existing public safety frameworks and disrupt how firearm regulations have traditionally been enforced at the state level. This sharp divide highlights a deeper and long-standing constitutional question. Who ultimately has the authority to set limits on firearm regulation, the states, which pass and enforce laws, or the courts, which determine whether those laws meet constitutional boundaries? The stakes are high because the outcome of this case could reach far beyond permit systems alone. It has the potential to influence the entire framework courts use to evaluate gun laws nationwide, shaping how future regulations are reviewed, challenged, and upheld. Permit systems under review. Permit systems across the United States vary significantly from state to state. Some states continue to require permits before individuals can carry firearms, including handguns, pistols, and other regulated guns. These permit systems are intended to regulate who may legally carry weapons and under what circumstances. Other states have shifted toward permit-less carry for certain firearms in recent years, reflecting different legislative priorities and interpretations of constitutional rights. It is important to note that the recent Supreme Court emergency order does not end permits. Instead, it questions how these permit systems are legally justified, leaving the existing rules in place while the case continues to move through the courts. In response to this ongoing legal scrutiny, states with stricter permit requirements are actively reviewing their laws. Some are waiting for guidance from lower courts before making any changes, while others are preparing alternative regulations to ensure that their firearm and permit systems remain compliant with potential future rulings. This process demonstrates that, for now, permits remain in effect, but legal uncertainty is prompting states to carefully consider how their regulations align with constitutional standards. Legal interpretation is key. A central lesson from 2025 is the growing importance of legal interpretation in shaping gun law outcomes. Courts do not make decisions based solely on the literal wording of a statute. Instead, they carefully examine several key factors, including context, the circumstances in which the law was written and how it applies today; constitutional principles, ensuring the law aligns with established rights and protections; precedent, considering how similar issues have been resolved in past cases; practical enforcement, evaluating how the law functions in real-world situations. Even a single sentence in a court ruling can carry long-term significance. That sentence may guide how lower courts interpret similar issues, influence state enforcement policies, and shape legal reasoning for years to come. In the case of this Supreme Court emergency order, the focus is on methodology, how courts approach and analyze permit laws, rather than on making an immediate or permanent change to gun law policy. This is a procedural and interpretive step, laying the groundwork for potential future rulings. What this means for gun owners and states. You do not need to personally own a firearm to be affected by these court decisions, because their impact extends far beyond individual gun owners. Court rulings influence how laws are interpreted and enforced, shaping legal standards, guiding constitutional interpretation, and affecting the balance between individual rights and government regulation. These decisions also influence how lawmakers, enforcement agencies, and lower courts apply existing firearm regulations in practice. For now, permits continue to exist where they are required, and states maintain their authority to regulate firearms, guns, and handguns under current laws. Enforcement agencies continue to operate according to these laws while closely monitoring court developments. At the same time, some states are reviewing and adjusting their permit systems to ensure compliance with potential future rulings, showing how the legal landscape can change even without immediate, sweeping reform. Legal uncertainty remains as lower courts continue reviewing the case and interpreting the specific issues raised by the emergency order. Each ruling adds new guidance and precedent that can influence similar cases in the future. This ongoing judicial process is a reminder that legal changes rarely happen overnight. Understanding the legal framework behind these decisions is essential for everyone, whether or not they personally own or carry a firearm, because the outcomes shape the rules, enforcement, and interpretation of gun laws across the country. Final thoughts and takeaways. The story of this emergency order is about continuity, not sudden endings. The legal system is still in motion. Lower courts will continue reviewing the case. The Supreme Court may take it fully, or allow it to move forward through normal channels. This is not a moment of panic. It is a moment to understand the process. Headlines may exaggerate, but the legal framework is deliberate, cautious, and structured. If you value calm, law-based explanations of ongoing gun law debates, subscribe to this channel, like the video, share it with someone who wants understanding, not noise. Because when it comes to gun laws, knowing how the process works matters as much as the outcome.